The best thing I've ever done as a reporter was in 2001. I just started at the BBC, and I was working on a radio documentary series for Radio 5, and we did the story about Sally Clark, who was found guilty of murdering her two baby boys, but it turned out these were cot deaths, and she should never have been in prison. And what we did was we started an investigation into Professor Sir Roy Meadow, who was this professor who said that unless proven otherwise, one cot death is a tragedy, and two is suspicious, and three is murder. But cot deaths, more boys die than girls, and that means it's in some way genetic. We don't understand the mechanism, but it's genetic. And if it's genetic, one cot death is a tragedy, and two is a tragedy, and three is a tragedy. And he was wrong too about statistics. And he said in court, and that helped convict Sally for murder, that the chances of this being a normal death were 73 million to 1. And actually, that statistic was wrong. I phoned up the professor of statistics at Oxford, and I wanted somebody posh. This is radio, so I wanted somebody who sounded posh, and it was an Aussie. I didn't know who the professor of statistics at Oxford was, but the Aussie guy picked up the phone and said, "It's just plain wrong." And he was absolutely on the money, and a very bright man. So eventually Sally Clark was freed, and also we helped free a woman called Angela Cannings and Donna Anthony. Our journalism helped spring from prison free people who had been put there for murder, and that's the best thing I've done. But nobody cares about that. I do. Scientology. I'm sorry I lost my temper with the Church of Scientology. They're very annoying, and worse than that, they're a mind control cult, and they screw people's lives up. And I was intensely proud to have been at the sharp end of taking on Scientology. They're a brainwashing cult, and I think that Tom Cruise and John Travolta are given too easy a time by the media. But I would say that because I'm the most suppressive person on the planet. When I got into trouble with Tommy Robinson, eventually I had to leave the BBC, but before doing so, the union, the NUJ, said, "Have you ever had PTSD?" I said, "Yes." And so he said, "Well, perhaps you've got PTSD." And I went to see a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist said that I've been suffering from work-related stress for some of the terrible things I've seen, and you get flashbacks. But the first thing the psychiatrist said was, "I really liked your film about Scientology." The BBC hired a second psychiatrist, a professor, and the professor of psychiatry said the very first thing, "I loved your film about Scientology, so I'd like to thank the Church of Scientology for helping me out on that one."
Amazing.
Two other moments that I look back on with pride. One was challenging Donald Trump about his association with Felix Sater. I said to Trump, shouldn't you have said to this guy, Felix Sater, who's a Russian-born gangster, "You're connected with the mafia, you're fired." And Trump invented an imaginary meeting and got up to leave. And as he came at me, I put my hand up. You can see it's my Twitter picture on my Twitter profile. I said, "One more question. Why did you buy your concrete from Fat Tony Salerno?" So Trump ran away from me. I feel proud of that. A year later, the Russians shot down MH17. The evidence for that is compelling. They did it by mistake, but they killed 298 people. And I went to this fucking field in the middle of nowhere in Ukraine, and there's a broken plane, engines, an entire cornfield covered in aircraft kerosene, suitcases. But the thing that gets me is those little wheelie bin little wheelie suitcases that kids, toddlers, ride on while their mum and dad pulls them along. And there were some of those in this field in Ukraine. And whenever I go through Gatwick or Stansted and I see a kid on one of those things, I get a flashback. So, clever producer found out that Putin was opening a mammoth museum in Yakutsk in Siberia, 9 time zones east. And on a punt, the thing is, you can't get to Putin in Moscow or St. Petersburg. You can in the sticks sometimes. So we went out there, and I look like a professor of mammothology, I just do. And I lined up with all the real professors of mammothology, and they're all shit scared of Putin. When he walks in, I jump in front of all the cameras, and I shake him by the hand and I say, tell me about the killings in Ukraine. Tell me about MH17. And I doorstep Putin, and the Kremlin are fucking furious with me.